Okay, folks, we are going to get started here in just a minute as everyone gets in. Hopefully, you guys all got your emails. I sent you a breakdown of American camps, kind of an American camp breakdown, so you can have an idea of what to look for as it relates to how some might help recruiting versus development. So check that. Just hit me in the chat if you have any issues with that, and we'll get started here. So I appreciate you coming on this webinar. If you're here, you've likely got some questions about the process involved in high-level football as a Canadian player. And I'll preface this by saying that this webinar isn't for all football players. It's designed to speak specifically to those that are high enough level to play post-secondary football or aspire to do so either in Canada or the US. And just a bit of background on me so you know where your info is coming from. My name's Kamau Peterson. I played my high school football in Windsor, Ontario. From there, I went on to University of New Hampshire on a three-sport full-ride scholarship. Started there all 4 years in football, ran track all 4 years, and played basketball for 3 of those years. Was drafted in the first round of the CFL, won a Grey Cup, was a multi-year All-Star in that league, and won Most Outstanding Canadian in 2008. I played for 3 NFL teams and an arena team during that 12-year span, as well as the bulk of my money was made in the CFL, though. So I really claim that league as where I honed my skill and where I was a professional mostly. I've trained athletes since 2006 in speed and power, as well as skill on both coasts, as well as held the head S&C position at the university level and national levels. Coached on the national team for 6 years, coordinated in youth sports for 6 to 8 years, and I'm currently the head coach of Team Ontario's U16 men's tackle program. That's a lot to say that I've worked in this space personally and professionally since 1997. And my goal in everything I do within the game is to help Canadian parents, athletes, and coaches take the guesswork out of what the offseason should look like for high level and potentially high level football players. In many ways, football is a sport that's detached in Canada from the feedback into the inner workings of high level play. And it can cause confusion for many. Those of us who've been through all of those levels, from recruitment to signing to high level play to draft process, pro seasons, pro championships, coaching and development. Um, I feel it's our jobs as curators of this game to relay what we've learned. And so that's what this is. Now, 85% of the questions I get from parents and players is how can I get an opportunity to play D1 football? And so I want you guys to really take a look at this chart and figure out where you fit, whether you're a player or a parent who's got a good idea of how big this kid's going to end up being. Take a look and just see, where you might fit size-wise, because you can't really control that. As a former D1 player myself, believe me, I understand the appeal of everybody wanting to go D1. But the first thing is to understand what it looks like from a measurable standpoint, because going D1 changes the game very quickly from a fun game to a big business. And in big business, you're looked at more as a performing asset in many cases than a student athlete. And these are the measurables on a general standard for D1 Power 5 players. The lower you drop in divisional caliber, the softer these measurements might get. So if you end up, shooting for an FCS school or a D2 school or D3 or NAIA or U Sport, then the measurements may soften a little bit, but it's not going to go crazy. It's not like receiver is going to shift from a 4.5 standard to a 4.9 standard. It's not. So it's important to know kind of where you sit and what the targets are. Not to mention, with the transfer portal now, schools are offering less scholarships to high school players in general, because why take chance on a 18-year-old when you can get a 20-year-old, 20 or 21-year-old fully formed athlete with a university transcript that can help you right away. So it's important to know these things and get an idea where you sit. In terms of speed and power development, there are a lot of ways to get stronger, but only a few ways to get faster. And the biggest takeaway from speed and power that athletes need to understand is getting stronger is considerably easier than getting faster. It will happen unintentionally. As you complete your growth spurts without you even trying, you'll get stronger. You can just pick up heavy things and put them down and get stronger. Speed will not really work like that. Speed's the single most important skill that you can develop if you want to create opportunities for yourself in the game of football. at any position except for kicker. And I'll say that again for the people in the back. Speed is the single most important skill that you can develop if you want to create opportunities for yourself in the game of football. And I say develop, and I know a lot of you think speed is genetic. I'm slow because my dad was slow. Not quite. Everyone has a capacity to gain in speed. Matter of fact, most of you who haven't done any speed work, you're going to see pretty quick adaptations. Your neural adapters will respond quickly, and all of a sudden you'll get a little faster. Now, how much capacity you have to get faster is definitely plays genetics plays a big part. But we've all got a bit of a window with which we can get a little better. It's important to understand that and see what your window is. Every serious football player should find the opportunity within their 10-month offseason to do at least 4 to 6 months of true and genuine speed work to give yourself the best opportunity to compete for scholarships. And speed work is something that is done minimum of 2 days a week, speed work. And we'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. Even lineman positions will find athletes of equal size will show speed and quickness as the differentiating factor for scholarship opportunities and starting roles, frankly, and even making teams. With that in mind, every football athlete should find the opportunity to make sure we get some speed work in that offseason. And I'm not talking about a month, I'm talking about a minimum 2 days a week, minimum 2 to 3, 4 to 6 months out of that. Any good speed program is going to have a couple elements, 3 main components: acceleration, agility, and velocity, and will likely pair with a power and strength program to manage the volumes of runs and build your athletes during that time. Most trainers that do speed will also want to handle the strength so that you can manage their lifts and conversely with their runs and get pairings there. Speed work needs to be done at 90% effort or better. Going out and running 5K is not speed work. It's going to get you in a condition for something, but not football. It's a different level of shape, different systems at play that speed uses and that football uses. They're just not the same. Speed work doesn't involve jogging aside from your warm-up lap. So really make sure you understand that key piece. If you're doing speed work, it has to be done at a high clip. You're talking 90% effort or better. And if you're not rested enough to do that, you're no longer working speed and working those systems. In terms of personal IQ development, serious players should be watching the game played at higher levels than their own. Understand what you're up against. Okay, Canadian players I find don't watch nearly as much football as American young players. You should be watching U Sport, NCAA, CFL, NFL football if you're a young player looking to continue to play, going after high school. But that's only one piece of the equation. You need to watch film of yourselves as well and watch the game more critically and tactically than just for entertainment's sake. You got to develop an observational perspective through more extensive film study. YouTube is a good tool for this. Many clubs are now filming games in high school and at the club level, but whenever possible, parent film works well too. But as parents and as athletes, I encourage you to nudge your clubs and your schools to try to invest in film because it really is an essential tool in this day and age from a recruiting standpoint. So if you have potential at being a high player, it's very difficult to get anywhere without film. So you're going to need to find some way to check that box for yourself. Without it, both to correct and to recruit. Without it, the growth curve is considerably steeper. If you do have film of yourself, seek to find someone who can evaluate it. Okay, and the key to understand where you need to improve. The trap that many of you fall into is that the play caliber in this country is spread out, to put it mildly. Maybe you're a pretty good player at the place you're at or at the region you're at. Maybe you're really good. So you might finish a game feeling like you didn't have much to really improve upon. That success can build a false sense of security. And then maybe when you get to a provincial camp or you go to a U.S. camp and you see a lot of other strong players, you might be left wondering what happened there. So really try to find someone that can break down your film for you and be honest in their assessment of you. And this is typically someone who's either played the position at a high enough level, like a high level like you're trying to get to, or a coach who's been around long enough to see the position played at a high level. Skill training. Okay, most players find skill work the fun part in training. Football is a sport that can get skill in multiple ways because it's primarily an athlete game, not a skill game, which means that the skills are easily taught but take time to learn because the game is so nuanced. But if you have high quality skill training available in your area at your position, that's great. A day or two a week of that will typically help your skill levels rise. Most people don't have that in their area though. So for those of you who need online skill training options, reach out. I'll help you with that. And for those of you who have teammates and siblings looking to get and work with you, the key is trying to sort through the misinformation that lies on the internet. And that's difficult. But understand, you don't need to play tackle football to gain skill in football. That's a really important piece. Other sports and other sport variations will also help your skill immensely. It's a really big point. If you have a trusted source you like for skill work, then I'm all for it. It's a big part of the reason why we launched our AP membership for those that can't get access to live skill sessions but are diligent enough to do the work on their own or film it and send it to us for correction. I wanted to make sure there's an inexpensive way for kids like I was to be able to see the right drills to do and get coaching points if they wanted to implement them on their own. I was that kid that I was super driven. I knew where I wanted to go, had no idea how to get there, and had no one really around me who could show me that. So that's important to have, and if you need help with that, we will certainly get that to you. Often we think of football as a game of strength and size, and in some positions that's true. Players are often sucked into the notion that they need to be bigger to be effective. Oftentimes, it might even just be a confidence thing. We'll feel better just when we're a bit bigger, and I totally get that. Depending on the position, there is some merit to the argument. However, most positions don't need to bulk up in order to be effective. And even those that do really need to make sure they don't add too much weight too fast, because what gets lost is way more valuable than the added weight gained more often than not. Many athletes and parents think that because you're very young, you can eat pretty much anything and perform the same. That's just not true. We include nutrition plans in all our programs because we really want to, at the very least, give athletes and parents a semblance of what the required calorie intake should look like for their athlete. Very few people know what 5,000 calories should look like if it's clean for a month. And it's important to see before you get to the collegiate level when you are preparing your own food. You can't out-train your diet. So if you're going to ask your body to perform at high levels, you really need to fuel it for performance, or don't really expect it to perform at all, really. Most of the questions I get regarding nutrition are centered around bulking. A lot of young athletes feel like they need to get bigger. So bulking is simply achieved by taking in more calories than you burn. Cutting is when you take in less calories than you're burning and try to lean out. Understand, if you're dead set on bulking and no one can talk you out of it, I would suggest that you only bulk when you're running a minimum of 2 days a week, or you're going to risk losing speed and mobility. You need to be moving while you're gaining weight in order for that weight to be your own to move later. Because one of two things is going to happen if you don't. You're either going to get really big, go to training camp, and set yourself up for injury because you're lacking mobility and lacking the fitness to be able to compete, or you're going to lose a lot of that weight either going into camp to getting in shape, or in camp when everything is ramped up intensity wise. So you're going to lose those gains anyway. So if you're running while you're doing any weight gaining, or while you're in a caloric, you're in a caloric plus time of your off season, make sure you're running, because that weight will then be yours and you can move it. Key points to this: adding weight without power and maintaining flexibility and range of motion at the same time is a recipe for injury and a lack of mobility. Power must be added at 4 times the weight you put on in order to be able to move that new weight at the same speed you did when you weighed less. That's an important piece a lot of people don't know. You need to add power to be able to move weight. Power is the ability to move and implement quickly, not just to hold it or to slowly move it. Power is what our game uses. We move weight fast. A punch or strike happens quickly. The weight you're moving is quick. So you need to add power to move your new weight. Always consider the impact of your performance at the desired position you're trying to play when you're bulking. So really be mindful of how is this going to affect my position going forward. Regardless of what you've been told, football is not a sport meant to be played all year round. And you know that because the offseason is so long at the pro levels. If done right, a player can completely reinvent themselves in the football offseason of 8 to 10 months. The idea of sport specialization that hockey is kind of implanted in the Canadian sport culture seems to be kind of seeping into other sports like soccer, basketball, and even football now in some places. And I see many club and rep teams pressuring parents to play the game longer than the 4 month block it was intended for at this level. And this is a trap. I can say under no uncertain terms that playing multiple sports will only help you be a better football player at every position. In fact, a bit of research on your favorite player will show you that they were likely at least a two-sport athlete in high school. The rate at the NFL level is like 98%. They do that graphic every time there's a Super Bowl. How many of these players played other sports? And it's really high every time. Most of those guys were three-sport athletes in high school, but and often excelling in multiple sports. And I was obviously an example of that myself, but it's not just me. This is a known fact that doesn't get conveyed enough nowadays. I'm gonna give you some positional pairings on this slide. You know, the added coaching in different environments, the different sport roles and physical asks of each sport absolutely will shape you into a better athlete, which I can't remind you enough is the goal. If you're wondering what types of sports will work well per position, here's some. The big one I get often from linemen is, I'm not really a guy who been playing other sports. When you're big, they kind of throw you into football early, and maybe you don't have time to jump into something else. Basketball is a great tool for big fellas, but anything that involves moving other people's leverage, like using leverage to move other people, is going to be great for you. Wrestling, rugby, jujitsu, these sort of things. But also footwork wise, always working on your change of direction and agility is great for big men. Court sports are great for that. Racquetball, squash, pickleball. Like, it doesn't have to be a club sport. You don't have to go broke trying to do these different sports. You can just go get some pickup basketball in. You can go play in a house league. You can go just play squash with a buddy and still get some work. You'll notice track and field is present in all of these positions. You'll notice basketball is present in all of these positions because these are building sports. They directly translate to what we do football wise. And you see a ton of athletes throughout history been able to jump from those sports with very little football in their background, which tells you again, reinforcing my point, it's not a skill game. Spring football. Now, I've been called anti-spring football. Matter of fact, I get called that every year when I do this speech, and I'm going to be super clear here. What I am is I'm unapologetically anti back-to-back football seasons for anyone, especially athletes under the age of 18. And the first point to that is simple health and wellness. The fact is that playing spring ball on a good team could yield up to 13 games. And then if that same athlete plays on a good high school team in the fall, by the time you get to offset, that's another 10 games in what is typically maybe 2 week break before training camp starts in the summer. And that's detrimental to any player. And I don't think that's even up for debate. The physical toll this game takes on you. You're not giving your body time to recover. You're setting yourself up for future injury. I played pro ball for 11 years, never played 23 games in a year, let alone in a 6 month span. And I was paid very well to do it. I don't think it's reasonable. And I think it's frankly dangerous to ask our kids to do that. No matter how much they love the game, no matter how much we love seeing them, I think we need to be the adults in the room and take responsibility there. The second point is that high level players, which is who this webinar is speaking to, will fall behind their competitors for scholarships. And on the depth chart for players who are using the offseason to train correctly, because the guys you're up against for these scholarships, they're not playing tackle football. Ontario is the only place that does that. They will fall behind those players that are doing speed and power work in taking 4 to 6 months instead of playing tackle during that time. While you're out playing spring ball, banging pads week in, week out, as great as the experience is and the competition is, you're not getting faster. You're not, and you are depleting your body because this game is hard on the body, as we all know. Your counterpart in Saskatchewan or Ohio or West Virginia or Quebec, they're all using that time in the weight room or on the track or the classroom or the grass, building themselves up to unleash on you in the fall. And that's just the reality of it. That said, if you're not a player that expects much playing time in the fall, then I can totally see spring being a great option for you. So you can have at least one season where you're in the mix. I also understand in many cases, in many places, the fall football is not as high caliber as the spring. And in some schools, don't even have football in the fall. So I do understand these are all great reasons to play spring, and I'm totally for that. What I'm saying is don't play back to back. That's what I'm saying. If you're a high level player seeking a scholarship, back to back is going to be detrimental. There are certainly positives to it. But if you guys who are on this call are likely high level players, otherwise you wouldn't be tuning into a high level webinar, like a webinar for high level players. So you likely play the bulk of the snaps in your summer team. you're usually on the field. Your fall team, you're likely usually on the field too, because high school is even more spread out talent-wise than the summer. And that can be overkill without enough rest, is what I'm saying. So if you're trying to get to the college football level, let me just be super clear because like I said, this gets misinterpreted for me every year. I'm not saying don't play spring ball. What I am saying is that if you're trying to get to the college football level, at some point, you need to pick one of those back-to-back seasons, spring or fall. If it's spring, that's fine. Then do something else in the fall that's going to help your football, or do a nice sport pairing like volleyball or something like that. And train in the other. Like pick one, play, train in the other. There is some merit, of course, to playing higher caliber players. The skill needle does move when you're playing higher caliber players, no question. If you have to turn up the competitive dial, of course, the skill meter goes up. But remember, at the end of the day, this is not a skill game. It's different than basketball or hockey or soccer that way. In those games, if you're not skilled by high school, it's highly unlikely that you're going to move on to high levels. Not so in football. There are countless tales of football players coming to the game late in life from other sports and having stellar careers, and I'm one of them. It's a game of athleticism. So if you don't focus on your athleticism, the doors in this game will quickly close for you in terms of high-level opportunities. Now, flag and 7-on-7 leagues are great skill builders for skill and semi-skill players. We're talking receivers, DBs, quarterbacks, running backs, linebackers, tight ends, and even linemen that love to run around and play. I think it's great for them. You'd all benefit from some flag. It's never a bad thing to become a better mover and more skilled with the ball. Both of those games teach defenders how to close in space, how to cover. Offensive players get a lot of touches and route work, which should translate back to tackle well. So as long as the program is teaching good fundamentals on these skills, I'm all for them as tools in the offseason, no question. That being said, I do think a lot of people think that 7-on-7 and flag somehow equate to opportunity for recruitment in the tackle game, and that's not necessarily true. I'm in contact with scouts and coaches all the time, and I don't know a single one of them that scouts 7-on-7 and flag as a real marker for play in the tackle game at any position. While the skill elements are very similar, they're exactly the same in a lot of ways, but the element of physicality being removed makes them very different games from tackle. And I still think both have great merit as developmental tools, but understand what they are and what they're not. Now, regarding U.S. combines, camps, and showcases, I hope you guys will refer to the PDF I sent you that outlines this. I think it's 6 or 7 pages, kind of really breaks down what types to expect, gives you examples. I'm not going to take that time here in this short time, but I'm just going to kind of gloss over the types. Okay, I generalize them into 2 types. There are over 800 schools in the United States and Canada that offer scholarships for this sport. So there's a ton of money to be saved through scholarships in this game. So I just want to go over the camp circuit in the U.S. because if that is your goal to get to the U.S., that's likely a destination for you and will help you figure out which ones to go to. Combines are first. Much of high-level football in general, the evaluation centers around measurables. Things like height, weight, athletic ability can really open doors and garner opportunities for young players as much as, if not more than, their actual play, because much of football evaluation centers around potential. Underclassmen should start off with combines and developmental camps and stay out of showcases until roughly your junior year or the summer going into your junior year. Every serious player should get a clock on them, an electronic time, at least once in off season and also once at the start of their fall season, so they can keep an updated profile for recruiters. You never know when they're going to come calling. Be prepared for combine-style testing like 40-yard dash, pro agility, and L drill, as well as jump tests like broad jump, vertical jump. Sometimes even a strength test like bench press will show up in one of those combines. So each of these tests has a ways to train for them to get better at. Like there's ways to beat these tests. So it's worthwhile to invest in that knowledge. If you're serious about scholarship, find someone who has beat these tests and can teach you those things. That's important. Combines are about getting verified numbers to keep your profile updated and send your numbers to schools that you're interested in. Make sure any combine you attend is using electronic timing if you want to use that time for your recruitment profile. Don't put hand times up there because the coaches and evaluators aren't going to rate that. Okay, 2 types of camps in the U.S. essentially. Okay, your skills camps, which are designed to make you a better football player, see how you stack up against other players for your age group and position, and learn at a varsity level skill set. Here you can expect position-specific drills by college level coaches, one-on-one challenges, sometimes even a bit of 7-on-7. These are mainly for underclass players looking to improve on a skill set before attending a showcase or a prospect camp. Then you have prospect camps, which are designed for college coaches to evaluate recruits on their campus. They're hosted by universities, typically last 1 to 2 days, and will have position-specific drills, combine testing, one-on-ones, and seven-on-seven competition, along with classroom meetings sometimes. These are primarily for upperclassmen who are being actively recruited by that college host or prospective recruits looking to impress the coaches of that school. Showcases, these help the top players get ranked on recruiting websites, earn star ratings, or gain interest from schools. Some are invite only and feature only the best high school players in the nation. Others are free for any varsity level player who's willing and serious enough to go pay for them. Essentially, you're looking at two different types of exposure with a showcase: college coaches versus national media. Showcases make sense if you're invited and it's reputable, so long as the schools you're interested in are actually attending. These events will typically list the schools in attendance well in advance of registration. So you should really review that, because a lot of these events will post that schools are going to be there. And then as you get closer to the event, you don't see any schools there. So really be mindful of that. This is a place, if there's a place to be taken for a ride, it's oftentimes in these showcases. Mega camps, these bring several college coaches from the area to one campus or neutral location and allows you to be evaluated by several schools all at once. If there's no mention of schools attending, it's not going to help you recruiting much. The invite-only showcases and exposure camps are typically the best thing, the best of the best, battling for star recognition in a rise in national rankings. If you're looking to get invited to such showcases, you'll have to be nominated by a known high school coach, sports analyst, or earn your spot from a performance combine by performing in the very top tier there. So like I mentioned before, killing a combine opens doors for you. So you go to one of these national combines and blaze sometimes and jump out the gym. You'd be surprised if you don't get an invite to one of these, showcases or mega camps or whatever, or even a school gives you a preferred invite to their prospect camp. So again, it comes back to your athleticism and what type of potential they can see in you, which often isn't really centered in your skill. Provincial and team camps, it's important to understand what's around you. These programs run in stages from the winter through the summer, so I thought it'd be good to outline these as well. Oftentimes we drive right by great camps on the way to lesser ones without really even knowing. ID camps are essentially combines, and every serious player should go to at least one provincial ID camp, I think, each year for two reasons. First, it's important to get a combine time to update your recruiting profile, as we've mentioned, every 6 months or so. Scouts and recruiters are looking for your most recent numbers, so telling them that you don't know what you run because you haven't been timed in a year or two does not help your case. Second, any serious player should want to get on the radar of recruiters and youth sports coaches, as youth sports coaches are going to recruit these ID camps, both in person as well as receiving data from them. Cuts are made from this camp, which gives you a chance to outshine other players and see how you stack up outside of your local playing circle. These typically take place prior to the spring season, so it's a good tune-up for all players. Development camps, these are just like they sound. Should you make it to development camp, you'll be coached by varsity and university level coaches. They'll build up your skill level through position drills, one-on-ones, seven-on-seven, even team periods, and there will likely be plays to learn and often film sessions. Each of these settings is a chance to separate yourself from competition and prove that you're coachable. That's another big piece that doesn't get talked about much, right? Can he retain a playbook? Can he go and implement that in a real practice setting against competition? Do I have to tell him something 5, 6, 7 times, or can I tell him once and he go out and make those corrections? These are all things that affect your ability to be recruited. Cut down camps, like Red Black is an example. These are equivalent of USA showcases in the sense that they're invitation only and will have a strong presence of university coaches and scouts present at the camp itself evaluating, as well as coaching and running meetings. There's also usually a cut process happening here, and your performance at this weekend will often influence your ranking or standing going into the fall season as it stands with schools. Top 90 players are who we cut down to at Red Black. And like I said, these can influence how you stand going forward in the fall. And making one of these teams, whether it be a provincial or national team, this has serious merit in a number of ways athletes may not realize. Anytime there's a large cut down, there will be more eyes on those who do make that team, and it boosts your profile and ranking to some degree. There's no question about it. aside from that, iron sharpens iron. And those practices and training camps with that team will be invaluable to your development. Not to mention, playing against the best teams in the country um, really does evaluate your play through the caliber itself, as we mentioned earlier. So just some key points on those. Again, these camps, these provincial teams are going to provide minimal body strain because they're only happening monthly as opposed to day in, day out. You're testing yourself against better competition. Iron sharpens iron. Access to film and highlights against high-level competition, which are going to be great for your highlight tape and your profile. And you can track your numbers and be able to update your recruiting profile as well. I want to talk for a second about U Sports high school camps. Most U Sport university teams will hold a camp either in the spring, summer, or both for high school prospects. These are typically good camp setting to start working on coaches' relationships and compete against other prospects in the region. I apply the same rules in Canada as I do in the US, though. I would not recommend attending U Sport camps unless you're planning to attend or could see yourself attending that school. So what that means is if you have no interest in going to University of Laval, don't travel all the way down there and go to their camp just because they're offering one. Figure out first what schools you'd like to attend and why, then see if they offer camps, and then I would base my attendance at those camps on the fact that I could see myself attending, because ideally, if things go well, that conversation is going to get struck up with a coach. He might even ask, why do you want to come here? And you should have some answers ready for that you've already researched. I do find a lot of underclassmen don't hit these camps because their eyes are south, and juniors and seniors are typically heavy here as they seem to have more viable options for them in the coming years. These are great ways to get verified times, these U Sport camps, as most of these schools have a combine at their camps. That said, if the school isn't using electronic timing, you won't be able to use that time for your recruiting profile. It's a great opportunity to start and establish relationships with coaches. Like I said, you never truly know where people will end up. And I'll tell you a quick story on that when I say establish relationships with coaches, because you'll never know where you end up. My recruiting coordinator at University of New Hampshire, the guy that recruited me, is a guy named Chip Kelly. Went on to do some great things at Oregon, was a head coach at UCLA, was an NFL coach with the Eagles, a head coach with the Eagles, is now the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He recruited me to University of New Hampshire. He was a lowly GA at that time, a running backs coach. You never know where he's going to end, where people are going to end up. My quarterback in the same recruiting class is a guy named Ryan Day, who's the head coach at Ohio State. I can name 3 or 4 other guys that I played with or were coaching at the time that I was at University of New Hampshire that now are head coaches on Power 5 teams. And you would never know that from just coming into contact with me at a camp. And I'm not the only coach that's in that boat. You never know who you're talking to, and you never know what coaches will be looking for and what they will need. So always chat coaches up, always be cordial, be respectful, but also understand you never know where coaches are going to end up and what links they might have that could help you throughout the future. Appreciate you guys taking the time tonight. Like I said, we're going to pause for 5 minutes or so, then we're going to come back in. I'll be able to take any questions. We'll go for another however long it takes. I want to get every question answered, and I appreciate those of you who stop here. I hope you gain something from it. And again, this is meant to just be able to be a bit of a resource for you in a space that I know there's not a lot of answers for you. So I hopefully you're getting all that you need, and I wish you best of luck down the line. Please reach out if you have any questions.